Hello, this is an explanation of your Revolutionary War video project that you'll be working on this week that is due next week. You have a few different choices for what you can do. There's 4 different options, so I'll go through each of them and show you an example of some of them. You can make a song parody music video, so we've seen some of those in class, and I've been begging for somebody to make that Starving Time song to the tune of Semisonic, but since it's about the Revolutionary War, we can't do Starving Time. So I wanted to make a song parody about an event from the Revolutionary War. This says here you can work by yourself or in a group of 1 to 4 students. Now, if you do this, you can do it remotely, so people can film different parts and then you send them to each other through email, and then have one person edit the final version. If you meet to film, make sure, this is the important part, that you and your parents are okay with that. I don't want anyone feeling they have to get together with anybody, especially if it's something you're not comfortable with. So that's only if that's okay with you and your parents. Otherwise, you can film, if you work in a group, film different parts in your houses and then have one person edit it into a final version. Only one person in it has to sing. Other people can act out lyrics, dancing. More than one person can sing too, but if only one person wants to sing, other people can be acting out what's happening in the lyrics. They could be dancing, do whatever it might be, and I'll show you an example of that. Students must appear in the video at some point to count for being in the group. So no matter what part you're doing, you have to be at least in it for a little bit. So even if you're editing it, you have to make a brief appearance in the video. If you work by yourself, you can only have, you don't have to be the only person in the video. You can recruit your families. You could be the only person in the video, that's fine. You can recruit people in your family to also be in it with you to help out with acting or acting out lyrics or dancing, whatever it might be. So that's option number 1. I'm going to show you an example of it from some students that made a video to the American Revolution to a Taylor Swift song.
I'm Braden. That's Kimmy.
That's Katie. That's
There's Wesley.
It started with the French. Now I can settle west. That's what British say. That's what British say. I cause so much to defend, and I don't wanna pay. That's what British say. That's what British say. But I'll keep trying. Can't stop, won't stop writing. It's like I've got this common sense in my mind saying we're gonna win this fight. But the British gonna play. And the Lola's gonna hate. Baby, we're just gonna shake. Shake 'em off. And the record's gonna break. And Arnold's gonna fake. Baby, we're just gonna shake. Shake 'em off. They cut taxes on the tea, but we got sons of liberty. And that's what they don't see. That's what they don't see. We're surviving on our own.
dancing on my own.
We're making hits from close,
Move up as I go.
and they won't let it go. They won't let it go. But I'll keep trying. Can't stop, won't stop writing. It's like I got this common sense in my mind saying we're gonna win this fight. But the British gonna play. And the Lola's gonna hate. Baby, we're just gonna shake. Shake 'em off. And the record's gonna break. And Arnold's gonna fake. Baby, we're just gonna shake. Shake 'em off. 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 Hey. Just think while you've been putting down the axe, the taxes, and the dirty laws in the new world, we've been getting down with the Tea Party. My ex-land got a new treaty friend. She's like, here's a helping hand, but we're still gonna win. Into the Hessians over there with the hella good hair. Why don't you come on over, Skippy? We can fight. Yeah! But the British gonna play. The Lola's gonna hate. We're just gonna shake. Shake it off.
example of it. A couple things. Your parody should be the tune and melody of an existing song, but with lyrics changed to focus on the event of the Revolutionary War that you've talked about. An example, just to give you some ideas, could be a song about the Sugar Act to the tune of Maroon 5's Sugar, maybe, or come up with some other stuff. Lyrics should be, if you can, subtitle them on the screen like you saw in the example video so it's easy to follow along and see what the lyrics are. So that'll be the song pair. It's option number 1. Option number 2, make a hand puppet or action figure video. So you can make a video about an event from the Revolutionary War that explains what's happening using action figures or hand puppets. You can do this with 1 to 3 students. Similarly, you can film different people's parts remotely and have one person edit it by sending them. Similar to the other one, you can meet to film if you and your parents are okay with it, and only that, right? So make sure you get your parents' approval. If you have old toys kicking around, like we have old Star Wars figures, you might have some old Polly Pockets, put them to use. You can make sock puppets. This is a great way to do it. Or even, I didn't put it on here, but paper bag puppets. You can use whatever you have available if you want to do this. You can even draw pictures and glue them to popsicle sticks and make them move around. You want to break the event down to its most essential parts and write a script in today's vernacular to tell the event, meaning today's language. So make it simple, easy to follow, informative, but have fun with it also. I'll show you a video of it. I'll preface the video by saying that it was filmed quite a long time ago by students ed in class, back in the days when VHS recorders were still a thing. So the quality of it's bad. I actually couldn't even digitize it. I had to go to school, play it on my smartboard, and film it with my camera. So the picture and the sound is pretty terrible, but you can see it enough and hear it enough to get a sense of what they did with theirs so you can get maybe some ideas for yours.
North America, a new world.
Perhaps. Yes, I shall create the Virginia Company of London, and they shall establish a colony in the New World. It's the perfect plan. Perfect.
And so, in 1607, 3 ships were sent to find a location for the new colony. Landing in Virginia, what would be Virginia, and creating Jamestown. Totally awesome.
Yes, new land. We shall call it Jamestown.
Moments later,
Oh my, we are so sick. This is awful. The disease, the illness, this is just awful. So hot, so swampy. How are we to build a totally cool place to chill in such a terrible environment? We need a leader.
and then emerged a true hero, a soldier of fortune, a man of myth, a man who told many myths, John Smith.
I am John Smith. Yay.
John, please.
No problem. I will bargain with the local Indians and trade beads and knives and stuff for corn and turkey and other food.
John, we need discipline and training. We came to find gold. We're simply investors. We just want to get really rich and obtain bling bling.
Settler, you are wrong to believe that serious bling bling exists in this area. All you can get from here is the honor of knowing you made this colony work. Now, we must farm and build. We must work to make our colony work. This is Powhatan. This is Powhatan. I like to call him Chief. He leads the local Indian. He's nuts, but his daughter is a hot chick who will act as interpreter and someday make Disney $1 billion. She's Pocahontas.
I am Pocahontas.
Through her, I will trade fairly with the Indians. Hey, Indian, want to trade? Yeah, what do you got? I'll give you this cool pot for that scrumptious venison. Dude, that pot will look awesome in my house. Good deal.
The third option is to make a patriotic poem video. So we'll look at an example of one, write a poem that memorializes an event from the Revolution other than the Midnight or the Ride of Paul Revere. And the reason for that is I'm going to show you an example of that. So we don't want to duplicate the poem that's already been made. The poem should use embellishments to promote the patriotic cause, but still needs to be based on actual events. So we'll see that in the poem that it was to inspire patriotism. So they made Paul Revere look like a superhero as he rode the warn that the British are coming. So your poem would do the same thing. Pick another event from the Revolution. It can either be the events leading up to it, TX, Stamp Act, any of those things, or battles in the Revolution. Write a patriotic poem about the event with embellishments. After writing the poem, you need to make a video of your dramatic delivery of the poem. The video can either be showing you reading it if you prefer, if you like being on camera. If you don't, you can narrate a PowerPoint of the words, such as the video that I'll show you, or as the poem that I'll share with you in a second. Or you can find some other creative way to do it. So you could have your voice reading the poem. You could, again, you could have pictures if you want. You could draw pictures that's illustrated if you don't want to be on video doing it. But if you want to go really low tech and you don't mind being on the video, it can just be you delivering your poem dramatically to the camera. If we look at The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, some of you may be familiar with it. I'm just going to give you some excerpts of it. It's a famous poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow that immortalizes Paul Revere's ride. We all know about him riding to warn the people in Lexington and Concord that the British were coming. And we'll see some of the embellishments that he uses in his famous ride. So, a little bit of the poem. I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's kind of long, but I'll just read you a little bit of it so you can get a sense. And maybe I'll point out some of the embellishments. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly now is a man alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend if the British marched by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the old North Tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I in the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm for country folk to up and to arm. So you see the beginning of this, he's talking about they're going to hang, if the British are coming by land, they'll hang one lantern. If they're coming by sea, they'll hang two. So he's taking a historic event, putting it into a poem. A little bit more of the poem. Then he said and they said goodnight, and with muffled oar, silently rowed to Charleston shore. Just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide in her moorings lay, the Somerset British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar, across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. See about this, they're talking about the Somerset, a British man of war. It's a warboat, calling it a phantom ship, using images like a prison bar to give the sense of tyranny of the British. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with heavy stride, in the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now he gazed at the landscape near and far, then impetuous stamped the earth, and turned and tightened the saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry height, a glimmer, and then a gleam of light. He springs to his saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes, still full in his sight, a second lamp. Well, where we go? How's that? That certainly ruins the mood of the poem. But lingers and gazes till full in his sight, a second lamp in the belfry bird. So he's looking for is at land by sea. The second lamp is signaled. He knows they're coming by sea. A hurry of hoofs in the village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles and passing a spark, struck out by a steed flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet, through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night. The spark struck out from that steed in its flight, kindled the land into flame with its heat. And this is where we see the embellishments. From the pebbles beneath his horse, a spark, as if it's starting the fires of revolution, struck out by a steed flying fearless and fleet. The fate of a nation was riding that night. If Paul Revere doesn't succeed, the revolution is lost. And it kindled the land into flame with its heat. So we get this idea of the embellishment here, how magnifying how important this event was. Skipping over some of the poem, going to the end, they talk about in the poem, it's a pretty long poem, he goes through all the different parts of Massachusetts. You know the rest in the books you've read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again, under the trees at the turn of the road and only pausing to fire and load. So all these things talk about, if you study the story, you remember watching the video that when the British got to Concord, the arsenal was empty, and the Americans, the colonists, shot from them the whole way back to Boston. They didn't come out and fight in a field of battle which would have been a disaster for them. They shot from behind trees, from windows of barns, from behind each fence and farmyard wall, more of a guerrilla style that they learned in the French and Indian War. So this poem kind of captures that. And then the last part, so through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born of the night wind of the past, through all of our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will awaken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. So you get a sense from this, and you can look up the whole thing online. It's probably this is probably about half of it is what I read. But you can get a sense of it if you from this little excerpt that I read. So if you write a poem about some event, it can be similar to that. You could again just put yourself on camera and say it and read it off a piece of paper. You could put it on a PowerPoint Lectus if you have that ability and just read the lyrics as it goes. But somehow deliver it on camera. So if you want to do that poem, I also here's the guidelines for it again. Also, here's another creative way to do it. You could put it to a rhythm if you like the style of music of rap or such. I'll give you an example of someone that didn't quite do it as a rap, but they presented it in more of a rhythmic way of doing it with a beat and drums and things like that. So if that's something you're interested in, you can do it that way too. So here's an example of a way you could do that poem with music.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on April 18 in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea on the town tonight, hang a lantern in the highest arch of the old church tower as a signal light. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm to every little village and every little farm, for the country folk to be up and on. And then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rode to the Charleston shore.
Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
On the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he gazed at the landscape far and near, but mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church. And lo, as he looked to the belfry height, a glimmer then a gleam of shimmering light. To the saddle, the bridle he turns and pauses and lingers till full on his sight. A second lamp in the belfry burns, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk of the dark, and beneath on the pebbles in passing a spark. And yet through the gloom of the pale moonlight, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and a spark struck out by the steed in flight kindled the land into flame with
Remember that
its
famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
Now one was safe, asleep in his bed, who at the bridge be the first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by British musket ball. You know the rest, in the books you read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the field to emerge again. Under the tree at the turn in the road, only to pause to fire and load. So through the night went his cry of alarm to every little village and every little farm, a cry of defiance, not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and the word that shall echo forevermore. In the hour of peril and darkness and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed, the midnight message of Paul Revere.
Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day and year, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Remember that famous day
And then our last option for a video would be to make an illustrated story video. You can do this with 1 or 2 students. Again, you can share things online, email segments back and forth if different people make different parts of the video. What you're going to do is you're going to make a video that has a narration of a script that you're going to write and displays visuals and drawings in a way that inform the viewers of the story of the event of the revolution. Let's get the pointer back. There we go. I'll show you an example of this also. So if you're artistic and you don't like singing, you don't like poems, you like drawing, this would be a good thing for you to do. You could, if you want to do this in a group of 2 students, like I said, one can draw, the other can narrate. You can share files electronically. You can have one person do the final editing. You can use a whiteboard, which will be the example that I'm going to show you. If you have a whiteboard at home, if not, you can make drawings on paper and just move drawings, to the view of the camera. Whichever medium of art suits your style and material. If you think of another way, that's fine. If you're questioning whether it's okay, you can always email me and ask. But this will be, if you like drawing and rather than singing, this will be maybe a good option for you. You can add extras to enhance the overall appeal of video. So if you have good video making skills, you can have some background music to add drama. You can have subtitles to what your narration is to help us follow the info. You can have sound effects if there's gunshots. But if it's a battle, you can have that, or cannons exploding, or anything like that. So I'll show you an example of that.
The Scramble for Africa and the Berlin Conference. What was the Scramble for Africa? In the 1800s, European countries were rushing into Africa to plant their flags in the land and claim colonies. Because of industrialization, Europe wanted Africa's valuable resources. Some of these included palm oil, cotton, gold, diamonds, and rubber. The control of the Suez Canal was also extremely important for countries wishing to trade with India and China. Overall, the Europeans thought the more colonies they had, the larger their military would be, making them a more powerful country. In the midst of this scramble to place flags on crucial African lands, disputes popped up over who had the best claim. When this began to disrupt trade and travel, Otto von Bismarck called together a meeting called the Berlin Conference. In 1884, 14 countries, minus anyone from Africa, met in Berlin. The major countries at the conference were Britain, France, Belgium, and Portugal. These countries gained much of the most strategic pieces of land. The French gained control of northwestern Africa, including Algeria. The British had control of both South Africa and Egypt, which included influence over the Suez Canal. King Leopold II of Belgium gained the Congo and Central Africa, and the Portuguese established their control of the western and eastern edges of Africa. So what effect did this have on the native African population? While Europe having their primary goal to be the end of slavery in Africa, their actions resulted in the increase in the women and children slaves. They also claimed to be the most civilized, but in reality they carried out horrible travesties in their colonies. In particular, in King Leopold II's Congo River Basin, over 5 million were murdered and hundreds had their hands chopped off. Europeans also arbitrarily drew boundaries without any regard for the local people groups. It was common for the controlling European power to exploit any existing animosity between people groups in order to keep the population divided and weak. This led to countless disputes, civil wars, and even genocides. You might recall the recent stories of thousands upon thousands murdered in the Sudanese Civil War and the ongoing conflict between the Hutus and Tutsis in the Darfur Massacre. The Industrial Revolution in Europe pushed countries to acquire colonies which could supply raw materials while at the same time becoming a captured market to sell their manufactured goods. This rush for colonies, aka the Scramble for Africa, led to the drawing of arbitrary boundary lines, resulting in tragic unintended consequences that are still affecting Africa today.
Right now, you've seen those examples of things you can do. Some other details, all videos need to be turned in on Google Classroom under video projects. So you'll see in Google Classroom there's all the work for this week, and under you can click on video project assignment and turn it in there once it's made. It's going to be due Friday of next week, so you have this week and next week to work on it. Now, there will be other stuff to do this week, so there's not going to, in next week. So this is going to be the only thing for the next 2 weeks, but it's due April 10th by 5 p.m. So that's a decent amount of time to work on it. It can be on any event in the Revolutionary War, like I said. So there's some stuff you haven't read about that you'll be reading about next week, the actual war itself. So if you want to look ahead, if you know some battles you're interested in, you can kind of peruse through the book. And then making a video about one of those if you want, or it can be any of the events that led up to the war itself. So the Stamp Act, the Townsend Acts, the Boston Massacre, any of those things. The only thing, like I said, the exception is you can't do a video or can't do a poem on the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere because we just already looked at one. So if you have any questions, email me. Hope you have a little fun with this, a little bit of break from our usual reading and taking notes in the book. And send me some emails if you have questions about what to do, or if you have ideas, that maybe vary from some of these, or there are a different twist on them, and you're not sure if they're okay, just let me know. Hope you have fun with this. Thanks.